And it's interesting, monks were forbidden to actually physically touch a woman, and were even forbidden to arrange a marriage between a man and a woman. So it's fascinating. We have every once in a while a very, high-ranking, deep-practicing Theravadan monk. One or another come through here. And I remember, it's a very famous, wonderful monk. He's done tremendous translations of the Pali Canon. And I remember he dropped his card in my hand, sort of like that, so as to avoid having any physical contact. And in fact, Thich Nhat Hanh has talked about this, that he as a monk fell in love with a young nun, and they started she was the inspiration for him beginning the School for Social Service in Vietnam. And goodness gracious, he touched her elbow. Well, but still, there is this deep strictness, very clear boundaries that are kept in that world, and in the world of monastics, hopefully in other religions as well. But the guidelines for lay people were really less exacting. As well, they should be. For example, one of the guidelines is that the male does not have intercourse with women who are protected by their mother, father, relatives, who have a husband, who are protected by law, or with those who are garlanded in token of betrothal. So this is, this very good, makes very good sense to us today. Misconduct in Buddhism is defined as something which brings harm to others or to oneself. So, when we say sexual misconduct, we're not saying do not have sex. We're not saying that in Buddhism to lay people. But we're really inviting a very different attitude than is characteristic in our culture, but also in many other cultures, where sexuality is demeaned, and particularly around issues related to women. For example, the Buddha lived in a very patriarchal society. And we live in a society where, I know in the 60s, free love, openness toward sexuality is characteristic of our time. So we can ask ourselves, to what extent does Buddhism ascribe any value to sexual freedom? I think it's a really important subject, difficult one for us to explore, but really important. Because the Buddha is not recommending for lay people that we are sexually abstinent. That's not what is even plausible. And even as we have explored here at Upaya, at the Zen Center, how do we provide a context of great heart and reasonableness and respectfulness and considerateness in relation to our experience as sexual beings? And how do we do this deeply and respectfully? It's a very fascinating inquiry to enter into. And of course, we know from the history of Buddhism that Buddhism has always adapted to the culture of its host. And that's very important for us to recognize. We're not trying to replicate the social mores of the patriarchal society of India of 2,500 years ago. That would be patently absurd. But we're also trying to find an expression of an understanding of sexuality that is in consonance with what we understand to be right sexual conduct. When I first began to practice Zen, I was told, as I began my priest path a long time ago, that Zen didn't really have wedding ceremonies. And then I suddenly realized, oh, actually, it's not just Zen, that the union of a man and a woman in the world was actually a civil matter, not so much a religious matter. It had to do with both relational agreements, but also social agreements and agreements related to real estate and family and so on. And so you don't find in the tradition, in any of the schools of Buddhism, something that we know so deeply in Christianity, those of us who were born into the Christian experience, the wedding event. But of course, since Buddhism is eminently adaptable, what it did was, of course, in our contemporary culture, is we started creating weddings, because our parishioners, those in our sanghas, were getting married and wanted to have their marriages blessed, their marriages deeply affirmed by the sangha, by the community. So it's not like a Las Vegas, drive-in chapel. I mean, what we've done really is to create a whole new form in Buddhism, which affirms the deep responsibility, respect, and love that a couple can generate when they find themselves within the context of a supportive sangha. Therefore, we now have Buddhist weddings. What is really of essential importance, however, are not these formalisms, such as weddings, or even becoming a Buddhist formally. What's really important is how the relationship is actualized. What are the principles guiding the relationship? How is the relationship nourishing, awakening, or compassion, well-being, health, balance within the individuals who have entered into it? Is the relationship about mutual liberation and sexuality about mutual liberation? Or is it about a kind of totalitarianism, a sort of bondage, possessiveness? So it's finding a relationship that is about liberation is a treasure. And the relationship does not happen from the Buddhist perspective in isolation. It happens in a community, in a sangha. So one of our guidelines, and we have all these wonderful young people who are living here at Upaya, and it's not to restrain people in an abnormal way, but we ask that when people come here, they don't enter into a relationship until they have been here for 6 months, where they can equalize all the relationships in the mandala of the sangha, and also where they can come to be a friend, a good Dharma friend to everyone, including the person that they feel some kind of attraction to. And we feel that's very important for the stability of the community.